Hi everyone, it's Hannah Catherine with Edie's Craft Room. Today we have a free layer cake friendly pattern to make together, so let's dive in. This quilt pattern is called Alhambra, and I named it that because I was inspired by the tiling motifs in the actual Alhambra in Spain. I had the pleasure of studying abroad there while I was a senior in college and just really enjoyed this gorgeous building and was thinking about it recently and inspired by the architecture throughout this historic building. It's amazing when you start designing quilts how you just see quilts in different patterns, and the Alhambra is rich of different potential quilts. So it was a pleasure to design just one. As I've said, this is a layer cake friendly quilt. You only need one layer cake. I know many of us who love a fabric line but aren't sure of what to do with it yet will purchase that layer cake and hold it in our stash for just the right project. This quilt comes together quickly and finishes at 56 inches by 59 inches. It would be a great gift for a baby shower or if you're just looking for a stash buster. One thing I love about this design is that it doesn't chop your fabric up into little tiny pieces, so it's great for larger prints or just fabric that you absolutely love and want to showcase in a larger design. If you love this pattern and want to make the quilt for yourself, you can go to my website at www.ediescraftroom.com. That's ediescraftroom.com, which is spelled E-A-D-D-Y-S, craftroom.com. And again, this pattern is absolutely free for you to download as a PDF and enjoy. So to get started, you will need a layer cake, which is made up of 10-inch squares, or if you are trying to use some of your stash, you will need 25 10-inch squares. If you are using a full layer cake, you're only going to need to pick 25 of them. I know that's really hard to do, but maybe you have a layer cake that has a lot of low volume or neutral prints and just a few colors. This is the perfect opportunity to use those just because you are using only a few of those 10-inch squares. I picked my 9 favorite of those 25 to be my square blocks, and then I used the other 16 for my star units. So we will subcut each of these into 1 4.5-inch square and 8 2.5-inch squares. For the background fabric, you are going to be cutting a bunch of different rectangles, so get comfy. This will help frame your patterned fabric. For your binding, you have a couple different options. On one hand, you could use the extra layer cake squares to make your own scrappy binding. I think that would look absolutely great. I purchased a little too much of my backing fabric though when I was testing out this pattern, and so I decided that I was just going to make my binding out of that extra backing fabric since it was already together and I wouldn't have to piece all those strips. But if you didn't make that mistake like I did, you have all of this extra fabric left over from your layer cake, so why not put it to good use and make a beautiful scrappy binding? The great thing about this pattern as well is that you can scale it. So if you like the size that I have written it for, you can absolutely continue with that, or you can make it smaller or bigger depending upon what you have in your stash, what you want to purchase, or what you need it for. Maybe if you're using this just for a small baby quilt, you're not making it out of as many blocks. Or if you have up to a king size bed, you could certainly accommodate that as well. So the possibilities are really only limited by your creativity. To assemble your blocks, you will just choose one of your 10-inch squares of the 9 that you set aside to use as the square block, and then you're just going to attach fabric D rectangles to 2 alternate sides. You'll press toward the background fabric and then attach a fabric E rectangle to the remaining 2 alternate sides and press toward your background fabric. The final block should measure 12 inches, so if you have a large ruler, this is a great opportunity to square it up. and you'll just make 9 of those blocks total, nice and easy. Now for the star point units, I recommend laying out all of your pieces first before sewing. That's especially important if you're using different pattern fabric for the stars. If you have just all of the same fabric that you are using for your stars, you're not like mixing and matching like I did, you don't need this step, but you want to be able to keep the right fabrics together. So that's why I suggest laying this all out and then just taking a picture with your phone to refer back to. I found that very helpful when making this quilt pattern, especially because I live in a space where I can't leave my quilt pieces out, either because of the cat or just because I live in an apartment and I don't like my apartment to look like Quilting threw up in it at all times. To make the star points, you'll just attach a 2.5-inch square right sides together to each end of the fabric, a rectangle. You'll sew from corner to corner and press out. Then just trim your excess fabric 1/4 inch away from the stitching line. Repeat on the opposite side and make 24 units total. Then it's just a matter of attaching your borders alongside the quilt. This should be pretty self-explanatory because you have your flying geese borders to match up with the inside of your quilt, and then you just have your background fabric borders, which all comes together super quickly. Then just quilt and bind as desired. I sent my quilt off to Sundance Quilting, my fabulous long arm quilter, and they did a beautiful, almost Moroccan print is what I would call it, which I thought tied in really well to the Alhambra theme of this quilt. I hope you enjoy this pattern. If you end up making a quilt with it, I would love to see pictures of it. You can send me an email or contact me through my website. It would be a pleasure and an honor to create something that allows you to create. Thank you so much for watching and spending time with me in my craft room. And until next time, happy quilting. Bye-bye.